Hi, and welcome back. I am excited now to walk you through the How to Lead a Conscious Conversation guide. We want you to maximize what's here for you. So let me share with you how to really get the most out of this. It's really like a workbook. So how to get the most out of this so that, again, you are prepared to be present in any conversation. All right, so let's dive in. I'm going to scroll through this just like you would in your download. So you can, of course, read through all of this. What I'll share here is the purpose of this guide is really to create a practice and a habit of being able to become more self-aware, more conscious, more intentional with how you communicate. We've really learned that communication can be one of the most invisible things. It's just, how we talk. It's how conversations go. It's how people show up. And there's so much more to it. There's so much more to it. And obviously that's what we're really about here at Amazing International and what all of our work is, so that you can speak, lead, and hold with love. So for this guide, the purpose here is to invite you to slow yourself down and really prepare for the conversations that are important to you, especially if you feel like they could be challenging or stuff could come up. So the invitation here is to have beginner's mind. Even though a lot of this stuff is stuff you already know, we want you to look at this through a beginner's mind and new eyes, fresh eyes, so that you can support yourself to really show up in the best way that you can. And by the way, what that means for us is nothing perfect. This is never about you being perfect. It is about doing the best that you can. So that's the invitation here. Now, preparing to lead the conversation, this is a quick overview. It's like a checklist. You can keep it close by. You can just make sure that you remember what are the things that you need to be thinking about and how to best get yourself ready, as we've been saying. So the pre-work is before the conversation happens. And this first question here is, what is your overall state of being? And what that really means is what's going on with you, what's happening in your mind and your thoughts, what's happening emotionally, physically, spiritually, and how are you really feeling? Are you feeling tired? Are you feeling enthusiastic? Are you feeling afraid? Are you feeling apprehensive? Are you feeling vulnerable? The more that you can connect with what your state of being is, the more you will know how to support yourself to be resourceful and to be ready and to be available and present. So please start with this personal check-in with yourself. And then this next question is, what are the practices that you have so that you can create and maintain a really effective and healthy and vibrant state of being? So do you meditate? How are you eating? Are you hydrated? Are you rested? These are all the things that are worth taking note of, because if you're having a conversation and you're really hungry, or you're irritable, you're not well rested, you're not at your best, it's all going to affect how you show up. And then how you're going to feel about yourself in the conversation and after the conversation. So we invite you to take that on for yourself, for your self-awareness and for your own self-mastery. Okay, the next question is, what conversation am I going to have and with whom? It sounds pretty obvious, but the more that you can prepare yourself to think about, what is the conversation I'm going to have? Which leads us to the next question, which is, what's my intention for the conversation? Is it to create a connection? Is it to build understanding? Is it to clean something up? Is it to address something that hasn't been discussed? Like, what is your intention? What's the purpose of the conversation? And also, how do you want it to go? Do you want it to be peaceful? Do you want it to create more of, like I said, an understanding? Do you want to be able to pause if things get heated? All of these things are useful for you to set your intentions and really reflect on it before. Then this next question here, creating the conditions, this is a big part of the work that we do. And George really coined this, and it's so powerful, is what conditions will you create to show up as your best for the conversation. And that's when you start to feel more self-empowered, when you can create the conditions. So for example, if you know that it's going to be a long conversation, you might want to make sure that you have lots of water. You might want to make sure if you get, sometimes I know for me, if I'm in a conversation or if I'm, feeling a lot of different emotions and wanting to stay present, sometimes it's good for me to have something to snack on. You might want to have a timer. You might want to set the, the length of the call or the conversation or whatever it is. Of course, this is for if you're face to face or you're on the phone or you're on Zoom or anything like that. This all applies. So what are the conditions that you need to show up for your best? And then here are a couple of additional contemplations to support your pre-work. How do I feel in regard to this conversation? What is my current perspective about this conversation? And how do I want to show up? And it's worth journaling or writing about this so that you can really do some inner work first. So if you're feeling nervous, then you want to take care of the part of yourself that does feel concerned or afraid, or maybe worried you'll be misunderstood or misrepresented, or, whatever that is. There's a lot of people who are highly charged right now. And unfortunately, as I said before, communication is one of the most invisible things. So it's not just what you say, it's how somebody listens. So you might feel worried about how are they going to hear what I'm wanting to say, and then the next one, what's your current perspective? Like, are you thinking this is going to go terribly wrong? Are you feeling optimistic? And then how do you want to show up? Given all of that, given your awarenesses, now you can make a decision and say, I want to show up in a way that creates a positive outcome. I want to show up in a way that is enthusiastic, like that. Okay? So those are really beneficial questions before. Now, during the conversation, how to best set up the conversation at the beginning. Number one is what we call set the container. We have an entire body of work and programs around how to set up safe space for conversations. It is like the bedrock of everything that we do here. And so this is something to help you get started so that you can create a space in which it's safe for you, it's safe for who you're speaking with, to really do the best that you can for the conversation. So number one, share your intentions. That's why the pre-work is so important. So you set your intentions and you can ask for theirs. If they say, I don't know, you can share. Well, here, for example, one of my intentions is that we stay peaceful. How does that sound for you? And so now because you've done the pre-work, you can share what your intentions are, and that might spark something for them. And now you're partnering in creating a safe space to start to talk. Okay, so that's sharing the intentions. Clarify expectations. So this is where you could get very specific. How long are you available for? Do you have a hard stop at a certain time? Do you have to be somewhere? The more that you can get clear on that at the beginning, the more relaxed and present you can be in the conversation. So it's very useful for you who are really guiding this conversation. You want to ask these questions in advance so that you are both prepared and you know what the parameters are. And then that leads into the agreements. So I've said a little bit about this, but this is the idea of, for example, not speaking over each other, not interrupting each other. You just set this, it's a request, and you're saying, I'd love to just agree that if, things get heated, we don't talk over each other, because then I can't really hear what it is that you're saying, and I want to hear what you're saying. So can we agree to that? And then you might want to say, and if it goes that way, let's just pause for a moment, and then we can start again. So you establish the agreements before you get into things, so that then you can have that should you need it in the conversation. Now, the next thing here is to practice, because this is all conscious communications is a practice, is to practice conscious listening and providing reflections. So the intention here is to create connection and to have the person with whom you're speaking feel heard and feel like you're listening to them and you're not judging them and you're just not waiting for them to finish their sentence so you could jump in with what you think. Because that's how most people talk. I mean, think about it, right? That's how most people talk. And that's how most people listen. And that's what most people are sort of on guard for. So for you to do your best to stay present, to really hear what they're saying, instead of calculating what you're going to say next. And for example, you might want to say, you know, I hear you saying that this is really important to you, or I can feel your heart, and I hear you sharing that this is difficult to say. Something like that. You know what I mean. But the idea is that you are ready to listen. You're showing up for the conversation ready to listen and to let them know that they're being heard. So again, this is the benefit of being able to have this guide and do the pre-work. So a couple of things to consider. Also, do the best that you can to listen for what they actually are saying instead of interpreting this. Again, each one of these areas could be a whole program. In fact, it's a big parts of programs that we have and why we're excited to continue this conversation and keep growing together. So for you here to really hone in how you listen and not assume you know what they mean, not interpret what they mean. You might even ask them to clarify and say, can you tell me a little bit more so I really understand what you mean by that? And if things do get tricky in that, because somebody might feel defensive, like, well, why are you asking me? I just said what I mean. Then you might again restate your intention of, I really want us to be more connected. And so it's helpful for me to understand what you mean and not make up a story in my head. So you're building bridges. So now the next piece is that you want to close the conversation and provide some what we call reflections. In other words, you want the person to know that you really heard them, that you felt them, and that you could share what touched you, you could share what you're left with, you could share whatever it was that is authentic. All of this always for us has to be authentic for you. But if you can find something where you can acknowledge, or you could say, you know, I really feel that this is important to you and I appreciate that we could have this conversation, so that they could feel from you that you were open, you listened, you didn't come with your judgment, you didn't come with retribution, you didn't come with, you know, being so positional. Instead, that you were really listening and they leave with that experience. So that's what that question is about. So here, this is about sharing vulnerably from your heart the best that you can. This, again, don't be perfect. Don't worry about that. Conversations are messy. They get like messy as all get go, you know, so it's fine if that happens. Do the best that you can to share from your heart. Do the best that you can to see from their perspective. You don't have to agree. You do not have to agree. You could just acknowledge, I understand that that's your perspective. And then authentically look for where you can relate to what they're saying. You can find an authentic connection and you can build on that. So now we look at what happens after the conversation. This is really an opportunity for you to go back and do a little debrief with yourself. And why this is so important is so that you can grow and you can celebrate your growth and you can really let yourself evolve as a conscious communicator. So this is very important and not something to skip. So we want you to have a personal review. Check in with yourself after the conversation and journal or do it here on this page, like how'd it go? And be kind with yourself. Sometimes we can be our own worst critic, but really look for, you know, I did set my intention. I was patient. I was open. Okay, I shut down at this part, but otherwise I got back into it. Whatever it is, just have a little personal review and identify what you learned and what you would maybe do differently, but without being unkind. In other words, be kind. Celebrate that you took the chance, that you stepped into that, because that's a big deal. And then specifically, here are some questions you can ask yourself. How do you feel it went? What do you feel you did well? What would you do differently? And what were some of the moments where you saw that, I could have been a little more open-hearted, I could have taken a breath here and just paused? Like what did you learn about how you would show up next time? So then finally here, we want you to celebrate. It's courageous to have conscious conversations. It's courageous to talk where other people close down. It's courageous to show up for a conversation rather than avoid or run away from it. So please here, celebrate yourself and let that in. Let yourself feel good. So here's some questions. What will you acknowledge yourself for? This is a powerful opportunity to be kind and give yourself an acknowledgement. I acknowledge myself for showing up. I acknowledge myself for creating an intention. I acknowledge myself for preparing. And what then, now go back to what did you learn, and then what could you add or refine with regard to your state of being practices? So that's question 1 and 2. Like, oh yeah, I could really, if I know I'm going to have a big conversation, I could eat before, or I could make sure that I sleep well the night before, or something, so that you're keep doing the best that you can to show up the best that you can. And then what else can you celebrate for yourself and for the person that you had the conversation with, because they showed up too? So congratulations. This is the guide. You can see it's very, very rich, and it has so much here. This is just the tip of the iceberg. So there's so much more that we have to share with you, and we'd love to. We look forward to it. As we have an expression here, we're just getting started. So stay in touch with us. You can go over to georgeandtracy.com and see the different ways that we can work together, the different programs that we have. You can email us and let us know how we could be of support and how we can serve you. We are devoted, we are committed to elevating consciousness by elevating conversations, and you are part of our community and part of this conversation with us, and we're here to support you. So we have so much here to share. You can go on and look at, some of our background as well. And in the meantime, we celebrate you, and it takes a lot to lead a conscious conversation. So congratulations. Let us know how it goes. Send us an email, and please be in touch, us at amazinginternational.org, and we look forward to hearing from you. Congratulations again.